And he's live. How about that? All right, I'm getting off to a little bit of a rough start here. Looks like I am going to be flying solo, and I'm only talking right now to the people who are actually watching this video. I don't think I've got anybody kind of tuning in because there's always that awkward space when you first jump on in a live stream and there's nobody there. So I just going to start out chatting right now, and hopefully we'll have some people jump in. I am flying solo right now. I got two people though. So as you jump in, if you want to leave a comment so I know you are there. Says we got two people, but I think that's just me and myself and I. Trevor, how's it going? Good to see you tonight. As far as I know, I'm going to be flying solo. As people start trickling in, we will start the Q&A. So how's it going, Trevor? Hope everything is going well with you. It's been one heck of a week. I can tell you that. So Gary, it's his anniversary, so he is not going to be here tonight. Aaron has got some stuff that he has to do around the house that his wife has preoccupied him with. Chris is out of town. Josh has a birthday party that he has to get ready for. I'm not sure where Brandon is. So far, I'm the only one to show up, but I'm always here for you guys. So hopefully things are cool. But one of the things that I thought I would start out talking about before we actually get into the Q&A, if people are interested in Q&A, is one topic that occurred to me that we have never talked about on our live stream before, or any of our videos for that matter, is what are your favorite rock and roll movies? Now, they could be live movies, you know, like the band, The Last Waltz, or Led Zeppelin, The Song Remains the Same, although that still has some fantasy elements that were intertwined with the live footage. Or it could just be a regular, like Beatles, A Hard Day's Night, Beatles Help. Elvis has got a lot of movies, or I'm trying to think of some of the other like dramatic movies like Pink Floyd, The Wall, which doesn't really star The Wall, although it does have The Wall's music, and Roger Waters was kind of the creative force behind that. Or, you know, The Who's Tommy, Ken Russell's Tommy movie, where you do have Roger Daltrey, you've got the rest of the Who in a couple of scenes. But that's one thing that we've never talked about, is what are our favorite movies. And I think one of the things that kind of was getting me thinking about that was, you know, we've had that Elvis movie that came out a couple of months ago, and I've seen it 3 times now, and I'm not even like a huge Elvis fan, but I thought the movie was excellent. I thought it was really well done. I thought that, you know, I learned a lot, and I thought I'd read a lot of books on Elvis and knew quite a bit of his story. But it was a really engaging movie. And I'm not, you know, thinking in terms of, you know, biopics or something like that, but just like, you know, U2's Rattle and Hum, for example, would be, you know, one movie. Hey, Craig, how's it going? Glad to see you join us. Hopefully you'll be here for the long haul. As I explained a little bit earlier, I'm kind of flying solo tonight. I don't know if Brandon's going to jump in at any point, but right now, the rest of the crew are all busy with other things. And so, you know, Almost Famous, yeah, saw it 4 times in the theater. Now, was that when it originally came out? Yeah, it's a great rock and roll movie. Trying to think of some other ones. You know, I mentioned The Last Waltz, and I'm a big Martin Scorsese fan. And I had read Robbie Robertson's book, where he kind of talked about everything that went into making that, and the fact that what you see in that movie is really not in chronological order. It's kind of in a, I think the first musical number that they do was actually, I think, the last number. And so it's in the continuity of it is very different. But hey, Prime Analog, how's it going? Good to see you. Hope you are doing well. This is Spinal Tap. This is Spinal Tap is a classic. I love that movie. I remember I was, I don't know, maybe like 11, I think, when I saw that movie. I don't know what year it came out, but I saw it in the theater, and I just it totally like went over my head. I didn't understand that they were making fun of like the rock documentary. And that's another genre too of rock movies is the rock and roll documentary. What are some of your favorite rock and roll documentaries? Like the Ginger Baker movie, Beware, Mr. Baker is a fascinating movie if you've never seen that. Or there's a great one on Big Star that I saw. I don't know, it might have been Netflix a couple of years ago. I eventually bought the DVD. There's a Beatles anthology if you're a Beatles fan. Um, Martin Scorsese's done some great ones lately, like he did the Bob Dylan one, he did the Rolling Stones one, he did the George Harrison documentary, which was really well done. There's the Eagles, the story of the Eagles, or whatever that one was called. Rocky Horror Picture Show, yeah, with Meatloaf, and yeah, that is that's got a fantastic soundtrack too. I actually have the soundtrack to that somewhere. And not the original one. This is one, I think it was like a repress or something like that. But yeah, I was just talking about The Last Waltz and just how, I mean, you've got Neil Young in that movie, you've got Joni Mitchell, you've got Van Morrison, you've got, who else is in that movie? They got Muddy Waters is in that movie. You know, Bob Dylan, although he would only let them film one number that he did. And I think there was a lot of legal hassle that they had to go through for that. The Tammy Show, yeah, Daddy Blog, the Tammy Show was a great one. That had James Brown, the Rolling Stones. I think Jan and Dean kind of were the hosts of that. I think you had some Motown artists as well. I don't know, is that available on DVD? Can you get that? But yeah, some great live performances there. And like you got Bob Dylan's, one of my favorite is Don't Look Back by Bob Dylan, kind of the, I guess you could say it documented his 1965 British tour. That was a good one. I mean, you got Metallica, Some Kind of Monster, which is a interesting documentary to say the least. Craig, the documentary called Measure of a Man. How recent was that? I don't think I've ever heard of that one. Hey, Mike, glad to see you here. This was a surprise. Very cool. Yeah, Paul Butterfield is on The Last Waltz too. I forgot about that. Yeah, Butterfield and Danko performing together around 1979. Yeah, the Tammy Show was a great one. The Rolling Stones Rock and Roll Circus. How about that one? That was originally filmed in 1968, but I don't think it saw release until like the late 80s or early 90s. They eventually came out on VHS tape and then eventually the DVD. But that's got Jethro Tull in their very early days. I think they only had one album at that point. You got Taj Mahal. You've got obviously The Who. One of the reasons why the Rolling Stones never wanted that released after they saw the footage was because they felt the Who blew them off the stage. Even though the Who did a quick one while he's away, which you wouldn't think that would be a number that would blow anybody off the stage. I mean, it's a fun number to do, but still. The Jacksons, An American Dream. Yeah, was that like a biopic? The life of the Jackson Five. Just saw Rock and Roll Circus. Yeah, that was freaking great. I know. And you've got John Lennon also in the band. It was called the Dirty Mac, where you had Keith Richards. I think it was it Mitch Mitchell, who was also in that band, if I'm not mistaken. And they did Your Blues, and of course Yoko. I think they did a number with Yoko, very unfortunately. But it was the last time you would ever see Brian Jones actually perform with the Rolling Stones live. I think there was some maybe promotional footage that was floating around, in early 1969. But for all intents and purposes, that was his last performance with the band. Okay, it was a mini series. The Jacksons was a mini series. Yeah, very cool. But yeah, what are some of your favorite rock and roll movies? They could be documentaries, they could be biopics, they could be movies like The Wall or Tommy, or something like along those lines. I think doesn't Neil Young have a couple movies even? But yeah, I don't know why I just got thinking about movies. I think just something to kind of start the topic off before we actually got into a Q&A. If there's another topic anybody wants to talk about, or if you've got any questions, you can certainly jump in, and we can talk about any of those. The Stones followed James Brown on stage at the Tammy show, and Brown stole the show. Yeah, well, I can imagine that. I mean, who want to go on after James Brown? Other movies would be like the Woodstock, the original Woodstock. I mean, you could say, I think another thing I was thinking about was that Woodstock 99 documentary, which has got a lot of live performances on that. But even the original Woodstock movie, there's a Monterey Pop movie from back in the 60s as well. And there's also, what was it called? That movie, The Metal Years, the rise and fall of Western civilization, the fall of Western civilization, or something like that metal movie that came out in the early 70s. Sid and Nancy, I think that movie was out in the 80s, which was a cool, I guess you could call that kind of a biopic. Trevor Rush had a real good documentary about 10 years ago. The name escapes me. Yeah, I know which one you're talking about because I saw that too. It was on streaming. It might have been a bit more recent than that. It was sort of like a documentary about Rush and their career, which was very cool. Yeah, Dazed and Confused, Craig, that's got a great soundtrack too. I mean, you could even say like movies like Pretty in Pink, which, what are some of the movies that have great soundtracks? I don't know if we necessarily call them like rock and roll movies, but, a movie like School of Rock, for example, is a great rock and roll movie. But yeah, for me personally, I mean, I've always even the Let It Be, well, it's not called Let It Be, but the Get Back documentary that Peter Jackson just came out with. And I was reading that Peter Jackson wanted to release an extended version of that, but apparently Apple and the other Beatle wives or whoever were like, yeah, no, we're not going to release any more of it. We're not going to have you do an expanded version. And that was one of the things when I got the DVD, I was really bummed out because one of the things I was most looking forward to was hoping there was going to be bonus footage, and I know already the documentary was like 8 or 9 hours long, but still having seen that, I would have loved. I know there's more footage that he restored that would have been very cool. Yeah, Gimme Shelter. That was one I was thinking of. Yeah, absolutely, Mike. That's a real interesting documentary of the Rolling Stones, their 1969 tour, which was kind of their comeback tour because I don't think they toured in 1968 or 1967 for that matter. And so, they had Mick Taylor on board, Brian Jones was out of the band, and then that whole documentary culminates with the Altamont fiasco, which sort of, when I was watching that Woodstock 99 documentary, that definitely reminded me of that Altamont footage from Gimme Shelter. But it's just really kind of chilling when you see, all those Hell's Angels in front of the stage and they're beating the shit out of people. And you got Mick Jagger up there, brothers and sisters, cool out. And like nobody's paying them any mind. They're still beating people with pool sticks and, you got them with their motorcycles, like right in front of the stage. Okay, Nicholas Pearl. Do you think Love and Mercy should have been split into two movies? One about 60s Brian and the second about 80s Brian. Yeah, well, I think the 60s Brian, I mean, it could have been, I suppose. But I think they covered the 60s pretty well. I mean, unless you're a hardcore Beach Boys fan, I felt like they covered the most salient points. Like they talked about the Pet Sounds and the Smile sessions where Mike Love had trouble with the lyrics and how Brian was taking LSD and all of that. I mean, they really could have definitely done two parts because The Brian Wilson story is so complex and so interesting. And I think even just a Beach Boys movie would be interesting considering the history that they had. I mean, you had Dennis Wilson, who got involved with Charles Manson and his cult. And you had Dennis Wilson, who was sleeping with Mike Love's daughter and got Mike Love's daughter. I think he married Mike Love's daughter or got her pregnant or something like that. And so technically he was like Mike Love's brother-in-law because of that whole thing. I mean, the Beach Boys story is so messed up. And everybody thinks of them as, ooh, they were America's band. They were, you know, the clean Beach Boys, but they really were not. The Beach Boys were one of the most debaucherous kind of groups. And I think that would make an interesting movie. But yeah, I mean, I could see, you know, I don't know, like with the 80s with Dr. Landy and all that, and Brian Wilson weighing 300 pounds, and then he had to go through. Yeah, I think they could have gotten more into the 80s with Love and Mercy and Brian Wilson's kind of recovery. Okay, Dennis Wilson did marry Sean Love. Yeah. Which I'm sure thrilled Mike to no end. Speaking of Stones, Bobby Keys, Every Night's a Saturday Night. The Bobby Keys story was solid. He was their saxophone player, right? I didn't know. I wasn't aware that there was a documentary about him. Yeah, Mick Jagger was terrified in Gimme Shelter. And also when they're watching that footage afterwards and they're just kind of sitting there, and I think it really kind of re-traumatized them watching that footage and seeing what they were a part of. But what a way to end the 60s. I mean, that's how everybody will always remember kind of the 60s. You had Woodstock in the summer, and then you had Altamont that pretty much kind of killed the whole myth about, you know, peace and love and all that late 60s stuff. But Festival Express, what is that, Mike? I'm not familiar with what movie that is. And Mike, I love the footage of the rooftop concert. Mel tries to turn off the amps. Yeah, I know. That was very hilarious. And the thing that was great about that, the thing you didn't see in the original Let It Be movie was the cops actually in the lobby. And the girls who were working there at the Apple offices trying to like put them off and trying to, you know, kind of stall while the concert was going on. So I think that was very cool footage to have, because in the original Let It Be movie, if you've never seen that before, you don't really see that. I mean, you see the cops up on the roof and you see them kind of like looking up, and you see some of that, but not to the extent that we saw in the Get Back movie. And I think that really made it more exciting, more interesting to watch, knowing that the cops were downstairs telling them to like shut it down and knock it off. The documentary is found on Prime Video. Okay, very cool. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, is there a Grateful Dead movie? Mike, it was about a train that traveled across Canada in the 60s with Janis Joplin. Okay, yeah, now I know what you're talking about. Yeah, it had like Janis Joplin. Didn't have members of Buffalo Springfield, or I'm trying to remember who was part of that whole like cross country train thing or whatever that was going on. Phil Spector or George Martin? In terms of production, it's obvious who the better person is. Yeah, well, no question. You also really, I mean, you could include Glenn Johns, because Glenn Johns did the original mix of the Get Back tapes. And then they were handed over to Phil Spector because the Beatles weren't happy with the version of the Get Back album that he had turned in. So, yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't hate the Phil Spector Let It Be album, but, you know, I know the Beatles weren't happy with it. And I think, you know, some creative choices that were made, like adding the choir to, you know, Long and Winding Road and things like that. But, you know, one thing that he did, which I don't know if people realize, is the song I Me Mine. He actually extended that. It was originally like a 1.5-minute song, and he, through studio trickery, added like an extra verse and made the song like twice as long as it originally was. But Yeah. So I don't, if you guys want, we can keep talking about movies if you want, or if you have some questions that you want to ask, just like a question about George Martin or Phil Spector as a producer. Um, we can totally talk about that. Yeah. So what do you guys think? Like I said before, if you're late coming in, seems like I'm the only one who's going to show up tonight. Aaron's busy. Josh has a birthday party that he's getting ready for. Gary, it's his anniversary. Chris is out of town. And so I'm just kind of holding down the fort here. And I didn't want to disappoint anybody and not have a live chat. So here we are, but I'm open to any topics that you want to talk about. Yeah, Nothing Can Hurt Me. That was the Big Star documentary that I was thinking of, which was very good. And I didn't know that much about it. I mean, I knew Alex Chilton was in Big Star, but I didn't know like a lot of the history behind that band. And yeah, it was a real interesting documentary to watch. Trying to think of some other favorite ones that I have. Yeah, How about Talking Heads? What do we call that? Stop Making Sense. Anybody a fan of Stop Making Sense, the Talking Heads movie? Hold on just a second. See, this is the thing when you're in a live chat, like you can't step away like you normally do. So anyway, yeah, Stop Making Sense is one of the most interesting concert movies where if you haven't seen it, it doesn't just start out, the curtain goes up and the band starts playing. It's like David Byrne comes on stage and he's got this little boom box and it's just playing like a regular drum beat. And then all of a sudden, he's like playing guitar, I think, along with it. He does Psycho Killer. And then I think it might be Tina Weymouth comes on stage and then she's playing. And then eventually Jerry Harrison comes out. And then it's sort of like finally like the full band. But it's a very interesting kind of a concert movie. The Love documentary, Love Story. Such a great band. No, I've not seen. You mean the Arthur Lee Love? No, I've not seen. I've not seen that. Is that on a streaming service too, or is it available on a DVD or something? I don't know. Do I think Mike Love is overhated? I do. I do, and I understand. Like, Mike Love certainly is no, hero in the Beach Boys story. And I get it. I think he was partially responsible for Brian losing confidence in the Smile sessions. But, I think Mike was just trying to keep the band together. And I know Mike, he got him heavily into, he was heavily into transcendental meditation. And, he had the Maharishi. I don't know if anybody knows this, but when the Beach Boys toured in 1968, they actually had the Maharishi, the Beatles, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi opening up. Like that was their live act. And people wonder why the Beach Boys like popularity suffered in the 60s, why nobody was going to see the Beach Boys, because they didn't want to sit through an hour lecture by the Maharishi before they heard the Beach Boys come out and play. So that the whole thing was like a debacle. And I blame Mike Love for that. And, certainly he was kind of an asshole at times. But he was their front man. I think, through all the shit that Brian put them through, that Dennis put them through, Carl had his own substance abuse issues. So, Mike Love is certainly, no saint, but at the same time, I don't know. I don't hate him as much as some other Beach Boys fans do. Yeah, Mike Love wanted to keep the Beach Boys basic, don't mess with the formula. I think he would have had them doing, and he would always say that, like, oh, we don't want to do these weird hippie drugged out songs. But even some of the songs on Surf's Up, were more topical. They weren't certainly car songs or surf songs. So I think even Mike realized that they had to adapt or they were going to be obsolete. You have the DVD probably available to stream also. So that Love documentary. Okay. Yeah. Which one was Manson's buddy? Brian Wilson? No, that was Dennis Wilson. And the only reason Dennis got hooked up with Charles Manson was because Charles Manson had all these women that would do whatever Charles Manson wanted. So if Charles Manson said, go sleep with Dennis Wilson, he would send like 3 women over there and they would have an orgy. And so Dennis Wilson, the only reason why he got in with Charles Manson to begin with is because he basically wanted to get laid. Like he wanted all of Charles Manson's women. And obviously he didn't know Charles Manson was a psychotic psychopath murderer, at the time. But, I know he was horrified afterwards and actually feared for his life. And Charles Manson actually made threats against Terry Melcher, who was friends with the Beach Boys. But yeah, a real scary, sobering kind of episode. And I don't know how many people know about that whole thing, but the decline of Western civilization parts 1 and 2. Hey, Swedish WB, how's it going? Alan Joyce, hey, how's it going? I am well. Thank you very much. I appreciate the love for the 100 albums. As a matter of fact, I filmed a couple of episodes today, and I did like part 3, which I actually uploaded today, and then I'm going to upload part 4 tomorrow, and then I'll upload part 5 on Saturday. But on the very last one, and I don't know what is wrong with me, but I get so lost in the countdown, and you'll see in the video for part 5, I actually had to do some editing because I started out, we're in the 50s, and then somehow I got it into my head that I was in the 60s. So it's ridiculous. This has not been as easy as it might look on video because I'm so scatterbrained. But yeah. So watched the Shania Twain doc last night, and it don't impress me much. Very funny. Song remains the same. And Purple Rain. Purple Rain. Yeah, I forgot about Purple Rain. That is a classic movie. If you're a Madonna fan, Desperately Seeking Susan would be one. But yeah, Prince had a couple of movies. He had Purple Rain. He had Under the Cherry Moon. He had, didn't he have Sign of the Times? Wasn't that like a documentary of the tour that he did for that album? And I don't know if Prince had any more. Did Prince have a sequel? Yeah, Prince had a sequel to Purple Rain. I forget what the name of it was, though. Why can't I remember? All right, what was the sequel to Purple Rain that Prince did? Anybody? But anyway, I don't know. I'd love to see a Prince box set of like Prince's movies. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, Purple Rain or Song Remains the Same. And people say, they were like, oh, well, that was, I think, the last concerts that Led Zeppelin filmed on that tour. They were filmed at Madison Square Garden. And people said, well, it didn't have the energy of their earlier concerts. And that's why I think people are not, or I don't want to say people, but, I've heard one of the knocks against the Song Remains the Same. The soundtrack is, it was just kind of low energy compared to, I think there's a couple of reasons. Number one, it was kind of, low energy compared to the way they started out that tour. And I think the song selection on the Song Remains the Same. I mean, did we need 30 minutes of Dazed and Confused or, 20 minutes of Moby Dick? That's why I love the expanded edition of Song Remains the Same, because we got some of the other songs that was recorded. Graffiti Bridge. Yeah. Graffiti Bridge. Thank you. Okay. Was that movie any good or not? I mean, I know it's probably not as good as Purple Rain, but I've never seen it. So I don't know about that. But 8 Mile, yeah, the Eminem movie. That was a remake of Purple Rain. The story is very similar. Yeah. Because isn't Marshall Mathers playing himself in 8 Mile? But I don't think you see that much anymore. Like, you don't see movies like Purple Rain where you've got an artist who's actually acting or a rock and roll. I mean, unless I'm mistaken, unless I'm missing something somewhere. But yeah, like when was the last time you saw a musical artist that was in a dramatic movie? How about Fat Boys, the Disorderlies movie? I don't want to forget that movie. Remember that one back in the 80s? Holy Christ. Under the Cherry Moon, Graffiti Bridge, 1990. Yeah. I mean, is there a box set of Prince's movies? Does that exist? Um, Rich, how you doing, Rich? Hard to beat Woodstock and The Last Waltz, other than like a Rattle and Hum. Yep, History of the Eagles, um, ZZ Top documentary, that little band from Texas. I haven't seen the ZZ Top one. I'll have to check that one out too. But yeah, did they make a movie about Woodstock '94? I mean, I know they've done documentaries about '99, and obviously you've got the classic documentary about the '69 Woodstock. What is my favorite, Ray? What's my favorite scene from A Hard Day's Night? Wow. You know, I like the Can't Buy Me Love, where they're kind of goofing around. It's like the uh the action is kind of sped up and they're just kind of like goofing around in that field while Can't Buy Me Love is playing. I love the kind of like that chase scene at the end of the movie where they find Ringo and then they're kind of like running around and they end up in the police are chasing them and then they run back into the studio. I got to see that on the big screen a couple times because there's a Redford Theater, which is a local theater around here. They play like old movies and stuff like that. And they did A Hard Day's Night, which I was thrilled about. And I saw it in IMAX. I saw A Hard Day's Night in IMAX at, it's called Greenfield Village, Henry Ford Museum. They have an IMAX theater there, and I got to see it there. Yeah, that Ringo scene where he's talking with the kids. Yeah, I love that scene too. Yeah, everybody kind of gets a chance to shine. You got George's scene where he's talking with like the fashion, the people they bring him in and they think like he's going to be like one of their models or something like that. It's pretty cool. Yeah, Vance, if I leave here tomorrow, the Artemis Pyle version of Leonard Skinner crap, no, I don't think I've seen that. Magical Mystery Tour. Is Magical Mystery Tour available officially? You bet your ass it is, Trevor. It absolutely is. In fact, a couple of years ago, I want to say, well, not a couple of years ago, it was actually about 8 years ago. And I will show you how you can get it. But so, yeah, Magical Mystery Tour did come out on DVD. And in fact, they put out this box set of Magical Mystery Tour that has it on. They have a Blu-ray disc, they have the DVD disc, they've got the actual EP, the original EP of the Magical Mystery Tour album. They got a booklet. They've got an actual like movie ticket for Magical Mystery Tour, even though it was never officially released theatrically. Yeah, Magical Mystery Tour is an interesting because people either love that movie or if you're not a Beatles fan, you probably hate that movie. I think it's very cool. It's very weird. I mean, think about Revolution 9 if they made a movie about that. The plot is basically the Beatles going on this coach tour. If you haven't seen the movie, if you have, I'm sorry, just indulge me. But they go on this coach tour through the English countryside. There's this weird race where everybody's on this airfield and people are running, people are on bikes, people are in cars. It's just so bizarre. It makes no sense, but it's very psychedelic and it's very much 1967. The Beatles directed it themselves. It's one of the weirdest movies you will ever see. And it reminds me really of like a David Lynch movie in spots where it's like very surrealistic. Yeah, the spaghetti scene where you've got John Lennon. It's a dream sequence where there's this fat woman, her name is Aunt Jessie, and she has this dream and John Lennon is like a waiter and he's like shoveling spaghetti onto her plate and she's like, I don't want any more. And he keeps like shoveling the spaghetti onto her plate. It's like, what the hell? What the hell is that? Yeah, some very weird moments. And then they go to a strip club. Yeah, the Beatles Magical Mystery Tour has this scene where the Beatles are in a strip club and Bonzo dude, I can't think of the name, the Bonzo Dog, dude, something like that. Anyway, they play this song and the song is called Death Cab for Cutie, which inspired the band Death Cab for Cutie. It gave them their name. But yeah, so like weird. Like what in the hell is, behind that? But I love it because it is so weird. Um, Vance says there was a cool series on Showtime, I think, called Roadies, which was a drama, but good, only lasted one season. Yeah, I think I've heard of that before, but oh, Dune or Labyrinth, great soundtracks. Yeah, Sting and Dune and David Bowie and Labyrinth. Bonzo Dog Band. Yeah, thank you, thank you. But and in fact, Traffic actually filmed a sequence to be in that movie. I think it was called "Here We Go Around the Mulberry Bush." Was a song that they did, but it never ended up making the final cut of that movie. Maybe because they thought, well, this is the Beatles movie, we're not going to start having guest stars in our own movie. But that footage is actually on the Magical Mystery Tour DVD. Roadies is on Hulu. Great show. Very cool. Yeah, the Sid and Nancy story is very sad. Well, and I don't think it was ever established whether or not, Sid actually killed Nancy, or whether it was like a drug deal gone wrong or something that was in retaliation. I'm not convinced that Sid Vicious actually, not that we're moving into a talk about the Sex Pistols, but, since you brought it up, I'm not convinced Sid Vicious actually killed Nancy. If you read up on, I think he was too fucked up to kill Nancy, to be honest with you. I think it was like a drug deal gone wrong or something happened, but I don't know that Sid had anything to do with it. Do I have Wings Rock Show on DVD or Blu-ray? I do. I have it on DVD. Yeah, that's a great concert movie. If you take away Paul's mullet, I think it's a fantastic movie. And like that was Wings, I think certainly at their best, for sure. Yeah, and there's even Wingspan. There was a documentary called Wingspan. Yeah, that came out like 10 years ago, I think. And it covers like the later years of the Beatles and then straight into Wings. And it was made after Linda died. So it was almost in some ways, it feels like a tribute to Linda McCartney. New York Doll was a good documentary on Arthur King. Yeah, well, if you mention a movie, if if it's on streaming or if it's available on DVD or something like that, let us know, because I know there's a lot of very cool movies that are worth checking out. But yeah, like the Sid and Nancy movie was great. Have you said like another one would be the Kurt Cobain montage of Heck? That was a very cool documentary. I love when they do like the animation in documentaries. Like there's a lot of animation in that Kurt Cobain movie where they kind of like recreate certain scenes from his childhood, like using animation, but very well done animation, not like cartoony kind of stuff. But you know what I'm talking about. If you've seen that, that was a very cool documentary. There's one on Elliott Smith. If anybody's an Elliott Smith fan, it's called Heaven Adores You. Heaven Adores You. It's an Elliott Smith documentary. I actually saw that on the big screen when it was released. They were doing like a tour where they were showing that movie at different art house theaters, and I got a chance to see that. And I'm a big Elliott Smith fan, and that's a great, great documentary if you know Elliott Smith. And if you don't know Elliott Smith, you need to check out Elliott Smith like immediately. Like get on Spotify, check out his music, or figure out a way to see that documentary. I'm not sure. I know that documentary is on DVD, but I don't know if it's on streaming anywhere. Do I have April Wine live in London VHS? If not, it's a must. I don't. I've got an April Wine live, like whatever their most recent live CD was, but I've not seen the live thing. Control. No, I've not seen. I don't think I've seen that Ian Curtis documentary. But what I have seen is there's a New Order documentary that covers a lot of Joy Division. I can't think of. I've got it on DVD. I've got that New Order documentary on DVD, and it does talk about. But was Control? Was that a biopic or was it a straight up documentary? I can't remember. But if it was a biopic, I think I know the movie you're talking about, but I haven't actually seen it. The first Beatles documentary I bought way back in the day was a complete Beatles. Yeah, I've got that on VHS tape, and I think the only reason it's never come out on DVD is because you've got the anthology, and I think Apple and the surviving Beatles don't want that complete Beatles to compete compete with the complete Beatles. But yeah, that was the very first documentary I saw. I do have it on VHS tape, and I saw it actually in the movies when it came out. I think it was 82, maybe when Complete Beatles came out, and that was amazing because you had some live footage that you'd never seen before, footage from their movies, which to that point had not been available on VHS tape. So yeah, I agree. That was a very cool documentary. Mike saw April Wine with Crocus. What year would that have been, Mike? Yeah, Swedish WB. Elliott Smith is awesome. Need to check that documentary out. Like, find it. You can probably get it on Amazon. I think you can probably find the DVD on Amazon or look on eBay. But it is a great documentary. If you're an Elliott Smith fan, you absolutely need to check that one out. I'm still waiting on some kind of documentary on Jeff Buckley. I have no idea why nobody's made a documentary. It's called Dream Brother, and it parallels the life of Tim Buckley and Jeff Buckley. And Tim Buckley, he was actually in an episode of the Monkees, and he started out as kind of like a folk singer, playing like Greenwich Village and some coffee shops, and then he built up a following and decided to do a complete about face. Started putting out this very avant-garde, almost like Arnett Coleman type of music. That was very non-commercial, and I think might have even lost his record contract or something over it because he was just putting out very out there kind of music. But yeah, just off topic, Alan, am I still adding to my synth pop collection? I'm always adding to my synth pop collection, and as a matter of fact, my friends Aaron and Josh and Gary are always adding to my synth pop collection. If they're ever in a store and they find a 12-inch single, for instance, today, Josh found the Missionary Man 12-inch by Eurythmics, and he's like, "You need this?" I'm like, "Oh, hell yeah." And it was still sealed. So yeah, I'm always adding to synth pop. I'm never going to not be collecting synth pop that I don't have. So yeah, Alan, absolutely. Can't Stand Losing You, Surviving the Police, Andy Summers. No kidding. On Prime Video. So it wasn't that good, Ed. That's kind of disappointing. Yeah, I'd love to see a police documentary. Craig, The Commitments. Yeah, The Commitments movie. That was one. Were The Commitments a real? They weren't a real band, were they? I mean, I know there was music in that movie, but I don't think they were an actual band that toured or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about movies and Beatles and things like that. How about Pink Floyd, The Wall? Who shaved off their eyebrows after watching that one? Anyone? Just me? Yeah, that was, that's an interesting, the story, you got Bob Geldof, who was playing, they actually have a character in the movie called Pink Floyd. And if you've not seen the movie, there's a scene where he takes this razor blade and he like shaves off his eyebrows, shaves off his nipples. Ouch. But yeah, that was sort of, I think, supposed to be like Syd Barrett. I think the character of Pink was supposed to represent Syd Barrett and how he kind of went crazy in the late 60s, did too much LSD, and eventually was forced out of the band Pink Floyd. But that's a very interesting, disturbing, some would say, movie. And there's a lot of Roger Waters' backstory in that movie. Because The Wall, of course, is somewhat autobiographical. Roger Waters and his dad. Roger Waters' dad was killed in Anzio in World War II. We never knew his dad. He was born, and I don't know if his dad ever saw Roger or if he was killed. But those scenes that you see early on in the movie with the mom and the little boy who's growing up and he's got no dad. Everybody else at the playground has a dad. That's Roger Waters. That's his story. That's how he grew up. He never knew his dad. His dad died in World War II when he was like an infant, so he never knew his dad, and that was always a big chip. The two big chips on Roger Waters' shoulder, and not to get into a huge Pink Floyd discussion unless everybody wants to, but the two big bricks, if you will, in Roger Waters' wall were the loss of his dad and Syd Barrett going crazy. And you could argue that almost every concept album that Roger Waters wrote, whether it was Dark Side of the Moon, whether it was Wish You Were Here, whether it was The Wall, all tied back to either the trauma, of growing up without a dad, or, having to deal with the guilt over kicking Syd Barrett out of his own band because he was slowly losing his mind. But yeah, The Wall is it's fiction, but in some scenes it's really not fiction. So yeah, the Fleetwood Mac story, that would make an amazing movie. Are you kidding? Especially that period, like around Rumors, where, they're all breaking up, and, I think Lindsey Buckingham left and then got kicked out, and, kind of all the craziness on the early Fleetwood Mac days with Peter Green. And then Peter Green left, and the whole Jeremy Spencer, was that his name? Where he like ran off to join a religious cult. So there's some interesting stories in Fleetwood Mac's history as well. Craig wants to know, which Beatle do you want to sit down and write a song with if you could? Well, the only thing I could write would probably be lyrics, but I would say John Lennon. Yeah, I mean, it'd be John Lennon, and I've got nothing against Paul McCartney or George Harrison, and no interest really writing with Ringo. But yeah, John Lennon, I think, just because he's got a sense of humor. He's written some of my favorite Beatles songs. I mean, Paul McCartney, he's got this history of being very controlling. His and Elvis Costello's partnership broke down. They never collaborated again, I think, because Paul's got that reputation of being very picky and wanting to have things his way. And I think that's why he and Elvis Costello never collaborated after that. But which Beatle would I want to invite on a live and interview? I don't know if you just mean interview. I mean, I'd love to interview any of the Beatles, but I think probably, if we're talking about, any of the Beatles, alive or dead, I mean, again, it'd probably be John Lennon. But if we're talking about the Beatles that are alive right now, I would have to say, Paul McCartney. Because, nothing against Ringo, but, honestly, he's just a drummer. God bless him. The documentary Sound City about the famous recording studio does touch on Fleetwood Mac's Rumors area. I will have to check that out. Another great documentary, they did one about the the West Coast. I forget what that documentary was called, but yeah, they talk about the West Coast sound and bands like Mamas and the Papas and the Byrds, and who else was over on that the West Coast. I can't remember right now, but that was a cool one. There's a very cool documentary that they did about Joe Cocker, which was another great one. The life and times of Joe Cocker, who certainly had an interesting a story, had his own issues with substance abuse and stuff like that. Yeah, Ringo would be telling you to back off Boogaloo, and George's guitar would be weeping. But George, I think of maybe of all the Beatles, probably the one, honestly, that I would probably enjoy hanging out with the most might be George Harrison, because he was friends with, he was a Monty Python fan. I love Monty Python. He was friends with Jeff Lynne. I love ELO. He was friends with Tom Petty. Love Tom Petty. I mean, look who he kept company with. I mean, Bob Dylan, Jeff Lynne, Eric Idle from Monty Python, Tom Petty. And they all loved him. They considered him a great friend. He had a great sense of humor, such a dry, droll sense of humor. I mean, he bankrolled Monty Python's second movie, Life of Brian. second or third movie. I don't remember. I think And Now for Something Completely Different was her first movie, if I'm not, maybe was that it? And then Holy Grail, then Life of Brian, then The Meaning of Life. Anyway, but yeah, I think, George Harrison, now that I'm thinking about it, he would have been the coolest guy, I think, to chill out with. Love the Cars. Talking Heads, yeah, we actually did mention Talking Heads before. We mentioned Stop Making Sense. And what a cool movie that was. What a unique movie that was. After watching the 6 hours of the Get Back special, I found a new respect for the quiet way Ringo worked. Yeah, I mean, Ringo didn't have much of an opinion in that movie, did he? He didn't really speak out all that much. He just kind of sat back and let the three, egos of the Beatles fight it out. And one of the things I was thinking about today, if we're going to talk about the Get Back movie again, was just how young the Beatles were. George Harrison was 26 in that movie. In 1969, he was 26 years old. I mean, think about what you were doing when you were 26 years old. I guarantee it was not making music with the Beatles or, having your life under a microscope like George Harrison did. I mean, John Lennon was 29, Paul McCartney and Ringo, I think, Ringo was 29. Well, no, John was 28. During the Get Back sessions, John was 28, Ringo was 28, Paul was 26 or 27, and George was, they were all, I mean, they were kids, but they just look so much older. And you think about like all, the Beatlemania and everything they went through in the 60s. I mean, that aged them to where they looked like they were in their late 30s by the time you got to the Get Back. I mean, they were just so old, in terms of, what they had been through. But they really were, I mean, they weren't even 30 years old when that documentary was made. So think about that. Terry Cass story on Prime. Yeah, Ed, is that the one that his daughter, or the documentary that his daughter put together? I need to find that because the Terry Cass story would be great. And, there's a Chicago documentary too. And I like Chicago. I'm not like a huge Chicago guy, but that's another band that had quite an interesting history as well. John wants to know, why aren't the Cars mentioned as much as the other bands in their era? Other bands being like, I don't know who you're referring to, like the Police or Journey or Foreigner. I mean, I think the Cars, and I don't know, because I don't remember, like in the late 70s, I was like 8 or 9 years old. So I'm not sure. I don't remember like how big the Cars were back then. I remember them being at Live Aid. Like I got into the Cars big on the Heartbeat City album. I remember seeing them at Live Aid. So, I don't know if they were just too weird for people. Their sound was too different, not enough mainstream. I'm not sure because they did tour. Yeah, Laurel Canyon. Yep, Crosby, Stills, Nash. Yeah, thank you, Rich. Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, the Byrds, Joni Mitchell, Jackson Brown. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Oh yeah, the Ruddles. All You Need Is Cash, Ray. That's a fantastic one. That almost plays like a Monty Python movie because you got John Belushi in that movie who plays Alan Klein, gives a hysterical performance playing Alan Klein. George Harrison is actually in that movie. That's a great one. You got Eric Idle from obviously Monty Python. You got that one dude who was on the Beach Boys, Ricky Fattar, who was on the Beach Boys in the early 70s, is in that movie. He plays the George Harrison character. Neil Innes, who I think was he in the Bonzo, that Bonzo band that was a Magical Mystery Tour? But yeah, that's a great documentary. I don't know if that ever came out on DVD. Or how about The Monkey's Head? The Monkey's Head movie. Talk about a head trip. If anybody's seen that movie, that's an incredible movie. That's like Magical Mystery Tour on steroids. Did anyone get annoyed with the out of place chronology in the Queen? Yeah. Well, and even more so in Rocket Man, Elton John, that biopic that was done, the one, what was like 2 years ago, um, with Edgerton. What was his first name? I don't remember, but yeah, I mean, they were talking like they have him doing Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, and he's like in a like he's not even famous yet, and he's playing Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting. Like the chronology in that movie drove me more crazy than the one in the Bohemian Rhapsody movie. But yeah, there's always going to be continuity, uh, errors or liberties that they take with continuity. Van Halen live without a net, Craig. Yeah, that's a great live concert. Blues Brothers. Yeah, how do we not mention Blues Brothers? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Spinal Tap. We somebody mentioned Spinal Tap before. That's a great one. John wants to know if I could be a roadie in any band, any era, who would you pick? I don't know. The one that kind of comes to mind would be Van Halen. I mean, how interesting would that be, being a roadie for Van Halen or Kiss even? And let's talk about how about Kiss? Kiss meets the Phantom of the Park. Do people now? I'm not like a huge. I'm not as big a Kiss fan as say Josh or Aaron or Chris or Gary is, but do you guys like that movie, or do you think it's a piece of crap that hasn't? I mean, we all know it has not dated well. If you've seen that movie, it has not dated well. It's very cheesy. It does not. I can't imagine any kid today wanting to see that movie unless it's just kind of like laugh at it. But I mean, do you, as a Kiss fan, watch it like? Yeah, I'd watch it again, or I've got it on VHS or DVD. I've always wondered. Apparently, there's a Kiss movie in the pipeline. Yeah, that would be. Well, I hope it's a documentary. I mean, I don't know. I'd even watch a biopic, I guess, on that. That would be very cool. Yeah, Ace Frehley sounded like Flipper. Yeah, because didn't they overdub Peter Criss and Ace's vocal, or not their vocals, but didn't they overdub some lines? In that movie, like when they're sitting, like when they're in the park and they're sitting on like the park or they're like sitting in the stands somewhere, like it's outdoors, and I think their voices are overdubbed. But yeah, that's definitely a worthy kind of movie. Brian loves Kiss Meets the Phantom, but is a childhood favorite. Yeah, I think if you got nostalgia for it, like if you're just you stumble on it on YouTube, and you can find it on YouTube, but if you stumble on it and you're like, what the hell is this? Yeah, I think you would laugh at it, or you think it was terrible. But if you grew up watching that movie, you saw that movie back in 1978, you grew up with Kiss, I could see you having some nostalgia for that. And I think that's understandable. Yeah, because Peter, I think, just wanted to go off and like not be a part of that movie. I think it was already contemplating leaving the band by that point, so he was not as invested in that movie as the other guys were. And by the other guys, I guess I mean Gene and Paul, because I don't think Ace gave a shit about that movie anyway either. But yeah, are there any really terrible rock and roll movies? Like we talked about the good ones, but like what have been some really bad ones? I'm not crazy about Tommy. I will say that. I mean, I like the music in it, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think that movie is necessarily aged very well either. I think it's something if you saw it back in the day or you remembered it, but I don't think you're going to watch it today and be like, that was an amazing movie. I mean, but you've got Jack Nicholson in it, you've got Elton John in it, you've got Tina Turner is in that movie. Rainbow Bridge, was that a terrible movie, Brian? I think that's sort of the reputation. If I'm remembering right, people did not care for that movie at all. Or I don't think Under the Cherry Moon got good reviews either, now that I'm thinking about it. Another one that comes to mind, Michael Jackson, there was that movie that came out about the rehearsals for what was going to be his not his final tour, but his final rehearsals for what was going to be like his comeback tour. I think it was going to start it in the UK. And and I don't remember the name of that movie, but it was kind of interesting. And I felt bad for all the dancers and everybody involved in that project, because he like died a couple of days after that footage was filmed. You have all those people working so hard to put on a great show and devoting themselves, and they ended up dying, and they never ended up actually doing that show. But I don't remember what that documentary was called. If somebody knows and you want to bring it, this is it. Yeah, this is it. Thank you. Okay, I never got to see that theatrically. I just caught it on streaming. Sergeant Pepper. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't know why that one wasn't immediately at the top of my head. Sergeant Pepper is a piece oh shit movie. Not only is it a piece oh shit movie, but it's a piece oh shit soundtrack. Like, whoever thought, and I know it was Robert Stigwood who thought of the idea, and that's just what boggles my mind is, let's get the Bee Gees and Peter Frampton. I know Peter Frampton's star was ascending after Frampton Comes Alive, and he was like the shit back in the day, and everybody thought, like, Peter Frampton, he's everything. He's got long flowing blonde hair and he's a guitar god. And then you got the Bee Gees. And that was released after Saturday Night Fever, right? Like, the Bee Gees were big they were big again because of the disco thing, but that movie's an abomination. It's terrible. And I know Steve Martin's in it. I know Aerosmith is in it. Like, I understand, but if you've ever had to suffer, and I do say suffer through that movie, because that movie is garbage. And I don't even know if Bee Gees fans like that movie. And I think it really blemished the whole Sgt. Pepper, some of those Sgt. Pepper songs for a lot of people. Holy crap, that was terrible. Dave Clark and Hermits films, yeah, like from the early 60s. Yeah, I don't know if you can even find those. Yeah, after Hard Day's Night, yeah, I think you're right about that. You had like the Dave Clark Five, or what's it called, like Catch Us If You Can or something like that, and then Hermits. How about Rolling Stones? Charlie Is My Darling. Have you guys seen that documentary? I think it was like their 1965 tour. It's all black and white footage. That's a very cool. If you're a Rolling Stones fan, that would be. Even Rolling Stones have quite a few good movies. You got Charlie Is My Darling. You've got Gimme Shelter, Ladies and Gentlemen, the Rolling Stones. Crossfire Hurricane, which was, I think, was a Martin Scorsese documentary, which was very cool. Coal Miner's Daughter, yeah, with Sissy Spacek. I'm sure I saw, but that was like a long time ago. That was like in the 80s. I don't remember much of it. Rock of Ages, John, was that pretty bad? Okay. The Earth, Wind and Fire, Got to Get You Into My Life. Yeah, that was a pretty decent movie. Yeah, and I really, like, if I saw, I mean, this is the thing, like, if you saw the Sergeant, and I'm a completist, know this, if I saw Sgt. Pepper, the soundtrack, in a dollar bin in decent condition, would I pick it up? I still don't think I would. Like, somebody could be giving that soundtrack away. I still don't think even being a Beatles fan, I don't think I'd have any interest in that one. But yeah. I Walk the Line. Yeah, that was another good one. Yeah, Sgt. Pepper with Bee Gees was unwatchable. Yeah, Rich, you're absolutely right. Yeah, Rainbow Bridge. I mean, I think hopes were high because everybody's thinking like, oh, it's a sequel to Purple Rain. Purple Rain was great, but I think it was too far afterwards. Eddie and the Cruisers. Oh my God. Yeah. Holy shit. Eddie and the Cruisers. Well, and the funny thing about that was, I remember seeing Eddie and the Cruisers and like the On the Dark Side video. And I mean, the guy who played Eddie was certainly very good looking, and he had that rock and roll attitude and presence about him. And then when you realize what John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band actually looked like, you're like, holy shit, that totally put me off that song. But I remember, seeing that seeing Eddie and the Cruisers on HBO. I mean, it's a piece of crap movie, but I do remember seeing it and then realizing like, oh, that's not actually the dude who sang on that. And the guys who sang on it looked like they were straight out of Hee Haw or something, but they looked more closer to John Mellencamp than actually Bruce Springsteen or James Dean and I think that's they were going for, like James Dean crossed with Bruce Springsteen, Eddie and the Cruisers. But that was a whole I don't know. Did they ever get sued over that movie? Did Bruce Springsteen ever sue them over that movie? Charlie Sexton. Can't say I do remember him. Yeah, was he in Streets of Fire? Okay. How about Saturday Night Fever? I mentioned that earlier when I was talking about Sgt. Pepper. Yeah, talk about a movie that is not dated well, although it does kind of give you a interesting snapshot of New York in the 1970s. But yeah, I watched that, I don't know, like 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm like, holy crap, this movie sucks. And then they even did a sequel to it, Staying Alive. John Travolta did a sequel to that movie, which is even worse than Saturday Night Fever. Anybody seen that movie? Favorite movie soundtrack? Okay, sorry, I'm bouncing around here. Favorite movie soundtrack? Well, if we're going to take A Hard Day's Night and Help and Magical Mystery Tour and Let It Be off the table, or The Wall. I mean, this is the thing. Like, we're talking about like movie soundtracks. I'm going to say, Hard Day's Night. I'm going to say Help. I'm going to say Magical Mystery Tour. I'm going to say Let It Be. I'm not going to say Yellow Submarine, but or like The Wall, The Wall might be my favorite movie soundtrack of all time. But if we're not talking like in those terms, I would say maybe like a movie, like maybe Pretty in Pink might be my favorite soundtrack. Or like The Lost Boys. I mean, I'm an 80s guy, so whatever it is, I'm going to probably say the 1980s. Speaking of Kiss, wouldn't it have been interesting if Kiss had actually done a movie for music from The Elder, if they had actually made the Elder movie, like I think they were originally going to, but then the album bombed and everybody ran away from the whole idea. But that might have been an interesting thing to do. Valley Girl. Oh God. Yeah. Valley Girl with all that early punk and new wave shit. Yeah, totally. That was a fantastic movie. Was Nicolas Cage in that movie? Or am I having the whole what do they call that? Am I just misremembering that? It was Nicolas Cage in that movie. But yeah, that was a great soundtrack. Okay, I changed my answer. Valley Girl. Love that soundtrack. That was amazing. So, although it's not a documentary, Almost Famous is one of the best movies about the 70s music scene. Yeah, agreed. Lifestyle of the Groupies, Life Within a Band. Yeah, totally. And I think they tried to do a movie, or not a movie, I'm sorry. HBO had some series, and I forget, it only lasted like one season, and it was also about the 70s. I can't remember the name of it. How about Empire Records? Anybody remember that movie from the 90s? St. Elmo's Fire, or Dirty Dancing, Craig. Yeah, holy crap. I forgot about that movie, but I don't know that I'm a huge fan of that soundtrack, but I remember like in 1987, everybody having that. Or another one, how about La Bamba? Remember that La Bamba, that movie about Richie Valens? And you had Lou Diamond Phillips, who was playing Richie Valens, and I forget who played Buddy Holly, but that was a cool movie there. I remember from that. I mean, back in the 80s, it feels like there was this huge nostalgia thing for the 60s. Like you had the La Bamba movie that was made. I think there was a Buddy Holly movie that got made. Everybody was feeling real nostalgia back then. Singles, yeah. Singles was another great movie. Yeah, you had all those like those great '90s movies with those great '90s soundtracks. Singles was one of them. The Records was another. Dazed and Confused was a great soundtrack. Wayne's World, all those movies. Queen soundtrack for Flash Gordon. Yeah, that's got some deep tracks on it. High Fidelity. Yeah, fun music movie. And High Fidelity, did that have John Cusack in it? How about Say Anything with the Peter Gabriel song in that one? I got to get that Flash Gordon soundtrack. Damn it. Yeah, Nicolas Cage was in Valley Girl. Thank you, Craig. I knew it. I knew it. The Stone Age. American Graffiti. Yeah, how about American Graffiti? Like even in the late 70s, everybody was getting nostalgic for the 50s. So you had in the 70s nostalgia for the 50s, and the 90s you had, or 80s, I'm sorry, you had nostalgia for the 60s and the 90s. I feel like everything nostalgia is always like 2 decades in the past, because you had 50s nostalgia in the 70s, you had 60s nostalgia in the 80s, 70s nostalgia in the 90s. Yeah, it's funny how it kind of works that way. Gary Busey played a good Buddy Holly. Yeah, he's been in trouble lately for groping people. I think he's in some legal trouble, actually. Ray, does anybody remember a very cheesy movie called Record City? It sounds familiar. The entire film revolves around a record store. It's a comedy, late 70s. I've heard of it, but I don't think I've ever seen it. John Carpenter directed Elvis movie with Kurt Russell. God, when was that from? Was that the 80s? And Kurt Russell was actually in an Elvis movie. I forget which movie he was in, but as a young kid, he was in an Elvis movie. Alan the Rose with Barbara Streisand. Never seen that movie. But was that the one with Bette Midler? Was she also? I know she did that song, The Rose, but was she in that movie? I don't remember. The Lost Boys soundtrack. Yeah, agreed. Where you got Echo and the Bunnymen doing People Are Strange, and you got that NXS song, Good Times, with I forget the guy that they collaborated with on that. But yeah, Breakfast Club with Simple Minds. Yeah, totally. Breakfast Club, that was like the movie back in the day. And I remember not being, I mean, I caught it on cable, but I remember getting in trouble because it had so many swear words in it. But yeah, the Elvis movie, that's the way it is. Yeah, and I think you see some of that in the new Elvis movie. They have Elvis during that whole "that's the way it is" period, where it's kind of like his comeback. He'd done the '68 special, and then he was going on tour. I think it shows him like getting prepared for the shows he did at the International Hotel in Vegas. But like that was like Elvis's last stand. After that, like, don't give me that Aloha and Hawaii bullshit. I think he was past his prime at that time. I really think like his peak was that period. The Elvis sweet spot for me was between 68 and like 71. I think that was like his best period. And then after that, it was all garbage. But That Thing You Do, yeah, Rich, that's another one with Tom Hanks, that movie about kind of like that early 60s band that never was. But or how about that Beatles movie, I Want to Hold Your Hand? Anybody remember that one from like the early 80s? You know, after John Lennon died, there was that nostalgic period where everybody was, you know, like going Beatles crazy kind of again. And I remember that movie was one of the things that came out of that whole time period. But yeah, Great Balls of Fire. Yeah, I remember that movie, the Jerry Lee Lewis story. Yeah, that was in the 80s too. That was Dennis Quaid. Dennis Quaid played Jerry Lee Lewis in that movie. That was a great one too. Trick or Treat. Mike, yeah, I think Gary's a big fan of that movie, Trick or Treat movie. Never play your records backwards. I know, like I did. I can't tell you how many records I played backwards back in the day. Brian Libb was in Empire. Okay. Yeah, Empire Records. All right. Yeah, Rock and Roll High School, Maureen with the Ramones. Absolutely. That was, what year was that? Was that late 70s or was that like, that had to have been late 70s because the album that Rock and Roll High School is on is End of the Century, which I think was like 78 or 79. So I think that movie had to have been like late 70s, right? Backbeat, yeah, that story about the early Beatles. There was actually a movie called Birth of the Beatles too. Yeah, so in like the early 80s, you had like all these like made for TV Beatle movies coming out. You had Birth of the Beatles, you had I Want to Hold Your Hand. There might have been a couple other like Backbeat though. I think that was the 90s. That was like the Beatles in their Cavern Club days or like their Hamburg days. The Crow soundtrack, yeah, that's another great one. I forgot about that one. Craig from the 90s. All right, Craig, thank you so much. Thanks for joining in. I appreciate all your comments and keeping the conversation going. Brian Setzer, yeah, that's right. He was also on La Bamba. Who did he? Oh, I know. Brian Setzer played. Oh shit, who did he play? Eddie Cochran. Brian Setzer played Eddie Cochran in that movie. That's right. Yeah, I forgot about that one. And that was kind of before he got into his whole big band phase. Yeah, thanks for reminding me about that one. I forgot totally. Or Cocktail. Anybody a fan of the Cocktail soundtrack from the 80s? You had Kokomo from the Beach Boys, and I forget what else was on that soundtrack, but or Footloose soundtrack. That was another one of those early 80s, kind of those iconic soundtrack. Yeah, that was. Yep, Ray. Yeah, I Want to Hold Your Hand. And the fact that it was spelled Iwanna, hold your hand. But yeah, like they never actually showed the Beatles from the ankles up. Headbangers Journey is great. The guy also made great documentaries for Rush. Iron Maiden. What's the Iron Maiden documentary? Yeah, the heavy metal soundtrack. Yeah, that was early 80s, wasn't it? Yeah, like very early 80s, I think. But yeah, God, now you guys are taking me back. Holy crap. Yeah, I remember all that stuff. Um, heavy metal was great. I mean, I think that was right around the same time of the that decline of Western civilization movie came out. Yeah, nobody took me up on the Fat Boys Disorderlies movie. I think, or how about Break In? I mean, if we're going to get into a little bit of hip hop, anybody remember that movie? But yeah, did Neil Young have a movie like Rust Never Sleeps or like from that whole period of time? Was there ever a movie made about that? I know Neil Young's had a couple of documentaries and things that have come out. But anyone seen Heavy Metal Parking Lot? It's here on YouTube. No, I've not seen that. School of Rock, yeah, with Jack Black. That's a great movie. That one is such a fun movie. 1981 was Heavy Metal. Yeah, I totally believe that. I remember when that came out. The Iron Maiden one's called Flight 666. Yeah, I'll have to look for that one. Covering a bunch of countries with their own plane. What year would that have come out, Brian? Just out of curiosity. Rust Never Sleeps at a Midnight movie. Yeah, that would be a great movie to catch. Is that on DVD? Can you find that movie? Okay, yeah, thanks, Alan. I knew I wasn't imagining that was a movie. But like, what are the best concert movies? Like we've already mentioned Talking Heads. We've mentioned Neil Young, Rust Never Sleeps. We've talked about The Last Waltz, obviously. Anybody remember seeing The Who like on HBO, like their farewell tour? On that tour that they did, and I think it was 1982. It was a tour to support It's Hard. And I remember seeing that on cable. It was like it was fine, but it was very much. I mean, the Who were not the Who of Live at Leeds back at that point. Iron Maiden, okay, cool. Pink Floyd also did a live show in the Coliseum in Rome. Yeah, Pink Floyd live in Pompeii. That movie. That's a great movie. I totally forgot about that one. I was thinking Pink Floyd. I just thought about The Wall. But yeah, Pink Floyd in Pompeii. That was a great movie. And that the interesting thing, obviously, about that movie is that there's no audience. You just see them in like the ruins of Pompeii, which was I don't know what century that was or anything like that, but you see them playing like in the remains of this amphitheater. And it's very kind of creepy, but that's what Pink Floyd was kind of all about back then. But you see them doing some songs from the Metal album, which had just come out. But that is a great movie. Yeah, there's two different versions. They came out with that on DVD. There's a director's cut, and then there's the original movie. But I would love to see that in the theater. I'd love to see that on a big screen. And I'm sure there's still places that play it. But yeah, that was a great, great movie. Yeah, Rich Alive in Central Park, Simon and Garfunkel, the reunion that nobody thought would ever happen. Yeah, I love that Pompeii movie. And they've got the live Pompeii footage, but they also have the Pink Floyd in the studio recording some Dark Side of the Moon. And I've heard some of that. They were just in the studio. They sort of manufactured some of that footage, even though the Dark Side of the Moon album had already been mixed. But you see David Gilmour adding some guitar parts to Brain Damage, which I think the album, the song had already been mixed. So he was just kind of fooling around in the studio trying to make it look like he was actually at a recording session. But you do get to see them on that synthesizer where they do On the Run and they manipulate the synthesizer. That's kind of cool footage to see as well. And there's some interview footage as well. Yeah, Queen didn't have a movie. I know you're talking about the Montreal Forum show in '81, but wasn't it called We Will Rock You? Didn't Queen have a movie called We Will Rock You? I'm pretty sure they did. Like in the late 70s. Supertramp had a Live in Paris 79 DVD. No kidding. I did not know that. Maureen saw the Rolling Stones and Havana movie. Was that, 3 to 4 years ago? I thought I remember seeing that. I've not checked that one out yet. I think the most recent Rolling Stones thing that I checked out, they had a Live in Texas show, which was released on DVD, and they also came out with a CD, which was actually pretty good because it wasn't like this huge stage. I mean, it was still a pretty small stage. I don't think that footage was ever released back in the day, though. One Track Mind. I know Heineken. Yeah, can we cheers on the Heineken? No, we did not, Daddy Bog. We did not mention The Big Chill, but that's another fantastic soundtrack. Yeah, like I was saying, that was another '80s movie where it was totally nostalgia for the '60s. You had all those great soul songs and Motown, kind of like that rediscovery of, I heard it. You're not supposed to sneeze on a live stream, but I just did. Holy crap. But yeah, there's some great, and you had, I don't know if it's on the soundtrack, but You Can't Always Get What You Want. I remember that being like very early on in that movie. Great soundtrack. Yeah, Big Chill rocks. Hold on a minute. I gotta. Oh, yeah. Sorry. I don't know if like my allergies or something like that, but yeah, thank you. We Will Rock You. I don't know what year that came out though. Um, yeah, I mean, in movies that could have been. I mean, we talked about, The Elder with Kiss. How about Crazy from the Heat? David Lee Roth wanted to make a Van Halen. He wanted to make a movie and have Van Halen do the soundtrack, but obviously that never happened. Yeah, thanks you, Mike. I don't know what it was. Yeah, I feel bad. Like you're not supposed to. Never. Rule number one, if you're having a live stream, is never sneeze. But you think Mike Comer ever sneezes on his live stream? I guarantee you he does not. But the Runaways movie, when was that, Mike? Was that the Runaways with Joan Jett, like that Runaways? Last Waltz? Yeah, we did mention the Last Waltz, which, yeah, I mean, people have called that like the best rock movie ever made, but I think, I mean, that's been a while since that. But yeah, it's got, if you like the band, I would recommend it. I'm not sure anybody who didn't like the band, it would be a movie you'd be into. Yeah, hay fever, Alan. I don't know, that could be hay fever, but I think I'm over it now. My sneezing spell is over. The monkey's head, yeah, Maureen. Monkey's head was weird over my head when we got back. Yeah, yeah. Well, Jack Nicholson wrote that, but also Bob Rafelson. I think he collaborated with Jack Nicholson on that movie, but it was so different. And the thing that I admire about that movie, like, granted, it's very weird, but it's not any weirder than, say, Easy Rider is. But I think it's really representative of that time. And I like the fact that they didn't just try to, do a hour and a half episode of the Monkees, which would have been very easy to do. They went totally the opposite direction. It was like the Monkees were trying to completely demythologize themselves, deconstruct the Monkees. But you want to talk about a piece of crap movie. The Monkees, 33 and a third revolutions per monkey. That movie is garbage. Number one, the quality of it is crap. It was shot for television. The music is deplorable. It's not interesting. There's no plot. That movie is awful. They included it as a bonus with the season 2 DVD package of the Monkees, but that movie is awful. I actually have, Josh found me the soundtrack for that, and I have it, but the movie itself is terrible. And I love Head, but 33 and a third revolutions per monkey is awful. Talking about bad movies. Yeah, Porpoise Song is very underrated. That was another Goffin and King song, Porpoise Song. But yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite Monkey songs. Yeah, the underwater scene. And another thing I love about that is that movie is very circular. Like at the beginning, they're underwater. They burst through, like they're doing that. If you've not seen the movie, they're dedicating a bridge and they got this ribbon cutting ceremony at the beginning of the movie. The Monkees come like bursting through the ribbon before they can cut it, and then they jump off this bridge, presumably committing suicide, and they all jump into the water. And then as they land in the water, the Porpoise Song plays, and then you're wondering what the hell is going on. And then it's only at the end of the movie do you realize what they're running from and how that whole thing. But I love like the whole circular nature of that movie. Anyway, Brian Auger and Julie Driscoll were not a good match. No. Is anybody like Brian Auger and the Trinity? Holy Christ. No. Yeah, Julie Driscoll. I mean, I'm not going to get into it because I hate that movie, but yeah, Alan, Absolute Beginners. Yeah, that was David Bowie, wasn't it? Was he in that movie? How many movies has David Bowie been in? I know he's been in Labyrinth. What other David Bowie movies were there? I mean, obviously there's the movie, another one, the live concert, Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. How about that movie? People like that movie as far as a concert film goes. But David Bowie, just like Prince, David Bowie's got quite a few credits to his movie, I don't know, filmography, if you want to call it. Yeah, Mike, I heard they named it Head, so it was successful. They could do a sequel and say, from the people that gave you Head, yeah, thankfully it was not successful. I mean, it's really a cult film now, just like Magical Mystery Tour is cult film. Yeah, also Ray Davies. Okay, Ray Davies and David Bowie were in Absolute Beginners. Okay. But yeah, well, and for you to have a concert film you have to be a pretty significant and entertaining, whether it be band or artist, um, to be able to pull that off, to be able to engage people in a concert for 90 minutes, let alone in theater. I like Song Remains the Same. I could do kind of without the whole fantasy footage in between there, but it really does show you, and none of us are out there. I mean, I'm not going to speak for everybody. I've never seen Led Zeppelin live, but watching that movie, and I've never seen it in the theater. I wish I could see it in the theater, but yeah, you get an idea just how powerful, how great Led Zeppelin was. So Rocky Horror Picture Show, yeah, we did touch on that a little earlier in the chat with Meatloaf, and that's got a great soundtrack. Also, Tim Curry does a great job in that movie, great singer. Were there any other celebrities in that movie? I'm not remembering. I mean, I know that Susan Sarandon obviously was in that movie, but as far as like musical, besides Meatloaf, was there anybody else who I don't remember? But yeah, Ziggy concert earlier. Okay, yeah, Alan, I must have missed that. So good. What was that like? Maybe 74 or something like that. It had to have been on that tour that came after that album. Bowie was in End of the Night with Jeff Goldblum. What year was that? Never even heard of that album before. Steven found a Scorpions live Tokyo tapes double LP for $10 today. Wow. Was that at the thrift store or where'd you find that? Just making sure I haven't forgotten anybody's comment or skipped over anybody. 27 minutes. Yeah, I mean, granted, the 27-minute, and it's funny because, that Dazed and Confused, I was in the car with my son yesterday, and he couldn't believe that there was actually a song that was that long. It was 30 minutes long, but yeah, I'd like to hear it as one thing, but then to actually see it like on the screen and sit through that, yeah, that's asking a lot, even for like the hardcore Led Zeppelin fan. Yeah, he couldn't believe that Led Zeppelin actually had a song that long, but yes, they do. It's a bit of a chore to have to sit through that whole thing. Yeah, Kids Are All Right. Yeah, talk about a great rock and roll documentary, and that really kind of works as a tribute to Keith Moon. But that's a fantastic documentary, and I thought that would be like the end all be all of Who documentaries. But if you've seen Amazing Journey, have you seen that Who documentary that came out probably, I don't know, had to have been maybe at least 10 years ago. That's like the Beatles anthology of Who movies. That is a great documentary. Love that one. End of the Night, End of the Night. It was a good movie in the 80s. I'll have to look that one up. 1985, wild movie, Michelle Pfeiffer and Jeff Goldblum. Yeah, that totally passed me by. Wow. Slow Gin, Bob Ezrin produced. No kidding. Wow. Yeah, and The Kids Are All Right was not so much like a historical documentary. It was just kind of a collection of like, I know it opens with their appearance on the Smothers Brothers, where they do My Generation and they bust up all their instruments afterwards. And then they kind of show like back in their early black and white footage. And then they kind of jump around, if I'm not mistaken, chronologically in that movie. But it's just such a great documentary on the Who. I got to watch that again. Yeah, that was such a great one. How about Wilco? If anybody's a Wilco fan, I Am Trying to Break Your Heart. How about that documentary where it talks about Wilco when they were doing the Yankee Hotel Foxtrot album and kind of all the drama surrounding that. When you had them getting kicked off the record label, you had there was kind of that like conflict between Jeff Tweedy and Jay Bennett. Jay Bennett was trying to do the songs his way, and Jeff Tweedy was like, no, I don't see it that way. And they kind of butted heads. And shortly after, Jay Bennett ended up leaving Wilco. But Ray says there was a really bizarre movie called The Phantom of the Paradise. Yeah, it sounds kind of familiar, but I don't know if I've ever seen that. What year would that have been? Was that like an 80s movie? Alan says the Stones Tattoo You concert film was great. Was that Let's Spend the Night? What was that one called? Was that Let's Spend the Night Together? It was like early 80s. I think I know the one you're talking about because you had like Mick Jagger and kind of like that pastel outfit. But yeah, like I know, I think it was called Let's Spend the Night Together, right? Wasn't it? I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Paul Williams played the Phantom in that movie. Okay. Yeah, that Wilco, first LP, AM. That is a great one. Right after he left Uncle Tupelo. For a 10 out of 10 good time movie, Mike recommends Thank God It's Friday. Yeah, that disco movie. I think I saw that back in the 80s and I was like, what the hell is this? It's free on Tubi right now. Donna Summer, the Commodores, Jeff Goldblum is in everything. Like there's been so many movies already that have been mentioned that Jeff Goldblum is in. Deborah Winger was in that movie. Wow. I had no idea. Yeah, Maureen, Tommy the Who. Do you like Tommy the Who or not so much? Also love Sunvolt. Yeah, Sunvolt, the other band from Uncle Tupelo. Yeah, how do I block this love chats XYZ guy? I don't know. Anybody know? Okay. Anyway, Phantom of the Paradise. Rich knows about that. Brian De Palma movie. Okay. Well, now you got me interested. Yeah, the love chat guy arrived. The point with Harry Nielsen, yeah, the cartoon where he kind of narrates, which I actually like that album. I've never seen the cartoon movie before. What was the name of the movie with Donna Summer playing Billie Holiday? Oh, geez. I don't know. How about The Wiz? You guys remember The Wiz from the late 70s with Michael Jackson and Diana Ross? You guys remember that movie? Yeah, how do I block the love chat guy? Hopefully he shuts the hell up. All right, I'm gonna hide you. All right, I'm hiding him. All right, can't see him no mo. Can't see him no mo. Okay. Okay, yeah, I got rid of him. He won't be bothering us. Yeah, remember The Wiz back when and that was that after Michael Jackson did the Off the Wall album? I don't remember. Or was that before? I just remember he still had his original nose on that. Yeah, that was kind of like that was like the Wizard of Oz kind of reboot done in the whole disco thing. God, yeah, that was late 70s magic, wasn't it? That wasn't Donna Summer. So Diana Ross, yeah, Diana Ross did play Billie Holiday, but I still can't remember the name of the movie. Somebody want to Google that or Wikipedia it, but I know the one that you're talking about. But yeah, that Metallica movie, Some Kind of Monster, and I'm not like I mean, I like Metallica, but that was sort of, I mean, I think it would have, if Metallica had broken up, I think that movie maybe would have had kind of a better reception to it. I don't know. I just thought like, okay, you went through all that and what was the whole point? I don't know. But yeah, that Wilco movie is great. The year before Off the Wall. Okay, so that was right before, The Wiz was right before Off the Wall. Okay. Mahogany, Lady Sings the Blues. Which one was it? Yeah, wasn't there a movie that like I know Midnight Cowboy had a great soundtrack that had Everybody's talking that Harry Nilsson song. We're talking like late 60s, but yeah. Um, yeah, fun movie discussion, but yeah, concert films. Um, I'm trying to think of like any more recent one, like Billy Joel at what was it called? Last Play at Shea. Anybody seen that one? Um, Cliff 'Em All. No, I've not seen Cliff 'Em All. Wasn't that was that released as part of that 598 EP thing, or was it? No, that was it a collection of videos? Refresh my memory, Stephen, about Cliff 'Em All. I know it had something to do. I think that were they like videos from when Cliff Burton was still with the band or not? Yeah, the Metallica documentary. Was that a documentary? Okay, yeah. Ray saw The Point on TV the year it came out. Wow, was that 69 or was that in the early 70s? Donna Summer Friday movie. Thank God It's Friday. Was that the one? Okay. Has anyone seen Eurovision with Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams? No, I don't think I have. But that sounds like an interesting one. Yeah, how about like movies like the Anvil movie? Has anybody seen the Anvil movie? Or there was like another one that's great. Has anybody seen the G.G. Allen documentary? You want to talk about a messed up documentary? There's a G.G. Allen documentary. I don't remember. I want to think it was like on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime. And I don't know if you guys know who G.G. Allen was, but holy crap, that guy was messed up. He was kind of known in live performances for like he would defecate on stage, he would break bottles and like cut himself and on stage, and he ended up dying of a drug overdose. But you know, that's a memorable one. Or the Kurt and Courtney documentary was another crazy one. Courtship of Eddie's Father's song and show. Twisted Sister doc. Yeah, that was a good one. I did see that Twisted Sister documentary. And they were I mean, they really paid their dues. It took them a while before they actually got popular. I don't remember the name of that Twisted Sister documentary, but that was fun. The Quiet Riot. You guys ever seen the Quiet Riot documentary? Which is kind of, I mean, I feel bad saying it's hilarious, but they just could not get their shit together. That was another very cool one. Yeah, Anvil, that Anvil movie is hilarious. The Rush documentary is very good. Yeah, Reservoir Dogs soundtrack. Well, not only the Reservoir Dogs soundtrack, but the Pulp Fiction soundtrack. But what I love about the Reservoir Dogs soundtrack is that you've got Stephen Wright, who's doing like playing like the radio DJ in between the songs. But I can tell you after seeing Reservoir Dogs, or anybody who's seen Reservoir Dogs, you will never hear Stuck in the Middle with You the same way again. Yeah, Alan. Yeah, G.G. Allen was a total degenerate, serious issues. He was on an episode of Jerry, the talk show guy, Jerry Springer. Yeah, like he was totally messed up. And I mean, I can't even tell you the things that he did, but yeah, his name was, they called him Gigi because his original name was Jesus. His parents actually named him Jesus, but his younger brother always called him Gigi, and so the name just kind of stuck. Yeah, his parents named him Jesus Christ, Gigi Allen, and it was all downhill from there. Like it was sort of like a boy named Sue. You know, your parents named you Jesus Christ, you're going to be messed up forever. Yeah, holy crap is it's a literal description of G.G. Allen, but yeah, such a yeah. Okay, well, you said it, Stephen. Yeah, when he eats his own crap, it's absolutely disgusting. I know, like I saw it, and that's a documentary I can never watch again, and that I will never get out of my head. So just know if you look up that documentary and you find it, you're never going to be the same after you watch it. Holy man. Dee Snider's autobiography is great too. Yeah, Dee Snider always, for as much as he was kind of an outrageous personality, he does seem like a very cool guy. I mean, I will give it to him. He seems like he has it really together. And yeah. Yeah, searching for Sugarman. I've heard about that documentary. I've never actually seen it, but isn't it about the guy who's like a bluesman and he comes from, where did he come from? I don't remember. Like, did he come from Africa or something? And he was like an amazing, somebody discovered him. Yeah, I still got to check that one out. There's so many good movies I have to find out, but once had a radio promo open-ended interview LP of the Kiss solos. No kidding. 2 LP local DJs saved it for me. Oh man, I bet you regret selling that one. Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about streaming services. You can find all these great documentaries on your favorite. I mean, name a musician, you can find it. Either it's on Amazon or it's on Netflix or yeah, flamenco guitar player. You're talking about the Sugarman guy? Yeah. Where was he from? I don't remember. Yeah, I need to check that out. I'm sure it's on one of the streaming services, but 70s movie called FM. Yeah, the Steely Dan song. That was the title track. Steely Dan had that title track for that song, that movie FM. Hey, Craig, welcome back. I'm glad you popped back in. We're still talking about movies. So you seen the G.G. Allen movie, Craig? I think you would not like. Yeah, Steve, I'll talk about anything. You guys throw open a topic. I started about music because, I was kind of waiting for people to come in. This was going to be just kind of a question and answer discussion, but there was nobody around to ask questions. So I just kind of turned it into a music discussion because we never really talked about, for whatever reason, we've never talked about movies before. But if there's any topic you want to talk about, we can throw it open and I'd be happy to chat about whatever. Sugarman is from the D, like Detroit. Oh, I'll see what I know. Let's talk Leonard Skinner. Okay, what do you want to talk about Leonard Skinner? Absolutely obsessed with this band right now, Leonard Skinner. Well, yeah, I mean, what I know about Leonard Skinner, I know they were a Southern rock band. I know they took their name from, I think it was a high school teacher that they had, Leonard Skinner, and then they just kind of manipulated the spelling of his name. Obviously, everybody knows that several of the band members died in the plane crash, but do you know why the plane actually crashed? Well, I don't know if you're asking me because you don't know or and you are going to tell me, but I think it crashed because they didn't run out of gas. I mean, I know it wasn't, I'm trying to remember the entire story, but I believe it was not like a great plane to begin with, but I thought I'm pretty sure they ran out of gas. I think it was called fuel exhaustion if you were an aviator. I think that's the official term that you would use. But I could be wrong. If you know differently, let me know. Yeah, they ran out of gas. That's what I thought. Plane was in deplorable condition. They should never have boarded it. Well, you could say that about like Buddy Holly. You could say that about Stevie Ray Vaughan. You could say that about Otis Redding. These artists, great artists who perished in airplane crashes, planes they never should have ever gotten on. You could talk Randy Rhoads. And Randy Rhoads' plane crash is one that I'm really interested in because, it just seemed like, they were trying, Ozzy Osbourne and his band. And for those who don't know the story, Randy Rhoads was Ozzy Osbourne's guitarist on his Blizzard of Oz album, Diary of a Madman. And they were on the tour. I believe it was supporting Diary of a Madman. And I don't remember exactly where it was, but they were on a tour bus and they stopped. They were near an airfield. And so somebody, I don't know who it was, I don't know if it was the bus driver or somebody, said, oh, there's a plane here. Let's take a plane for a joyride. And they thought it would be fun to kind of like buzz, fly over really close to the bus that Ozzy Osbourne was sleeping in. Well, they got too close to it. One of the wings clipped the top of the bus. They ended up spiraling out of control and crashing. But then I've read also that it might have been a deliberate suicide attempt on the part of the pilot, because he was having a fight with his girlfriend, his wife. His wife was leaving him. And as he was flying the plane, he saw her at the last minute and like aimed the plane towards her. I don't know. I mean, we're talking, somehow we got on this topic of plane crashes, but yeah, anyway, just really so tragic because he was such a great talent. Yeah, Jim Croce, another one. Yeah, Let's Spend the Night Together was the Stones film. Yeah, Mick with the flag wrapped around him and the inflatable penis. Wasn't he like straddling an inflatable penis in that movie? Yeah, Alan Collins, Ronnie Van Zant, Steve Gaines, Cassie Gaines. And Cassie Gaines was terrified of flying. That's like one of the biggest tragedies. She was terrified of flying, did not want to get on that plane, but she was persuaded. And I can't imagine the horror of like, I don't want to get on this plane. Oh, it's fine. No, it's fine. You're being ridiculous. And then the plane's like going down. You're like, your worst nightmare realized. I can't even imagine. Yeah, Jim Croce too. What a sad story. And you think of like what could have been, like if Stevie Ray Vaughan had lived, or I mean, even Buddy Holly or Otis Redding, the music that they all would have gone on to make. It's just such a tragedy. Randy Rhoads, obviously, but you know, I'd heard Randy Rhoads was really wanting to leave Ozzy Osbourne anyway, because Ozzy wanted to record a live album, which eventually became Speak of the Devil, which was all Black Sabbath covers, and Randy Rhoads was not interested in doing Black Sabbath covers, and so he was, I think, on his way to, I think he was going to finish out that tour and then was going to leave Ozzy, but yeah, really sad. Yeah, Ronnie Van Zant, I think, pressured Cassie Gaines to get on that plane with her brother. Yeah, really messed up. And there were people that survived that plane crash too. Like it was not, you know, everybody died on the plane. There were some people that walked away from it, or, I mean, maybe not walked away, but at least they survived that plane crash. But, and I know, like, you know, the plane crashed, and then the people who could, like, ran. They were like trying to find help, because this was the day you didn't have cell phones. You couldn't just call 911. And they ran to like some farm, and they had long hair, and the people at the house that they found were like freaked out, and it just seems like a horror story all the way around. Yeah, so many great people, Alan, you're right, that were killed in plane crashes. Stephen, the reason I wanted to talk about Leonard Skinner, first album, one of the greatest records, Freebird, Tuesday's Gone, Simple Man. Yeah, I mean, no denying one of the greatest debut albums. Artemis Pyle survived. Okay. Randy Rhoads, Craig says Randy Rhoads was getting into classical guitar and how to cross it over into rock music. Randy was a visionary and an artist. Yeah, well, and you know, Randy Rhoads was also in Quiet Riot before he joined Ozzy's band. And I think, you know, I think he put out 2 albums with Quiet Riot, and then like, okay, this band isn't happening, and so he took a better opportunity with Ozzy. But yeah, John Denver, another one. And John Denver was actually the pilot. I mean, I think unlike some of these other artists who died in plane crashes, John Denver, that was like his own fault. And I'm not saying that makes it any less tragic, but I think John Denver, if I'm not mistaken, was like not the greatest pilot like he thought he was. But I think, you know, for that instance, it was definitely pilot error. But yeah, John Denver, I forgot about him. He's another one who died in an air crash. You know, but I think probably, you know, just because Leonard Skinner, you know, it claimed, I don't know how many band members, like 3 or 4 band members, that's the one that people always remember. Is anyone into the 70s band stars? They should have been huge. I've not heard of them. I know there was a band that came out in like the early 2000s called Stars, but I'm not familiar with the 70s band Stars. Yeah. Yeah, John Denver jumped into a plane. He did not know how to fly the particular plane he piloted. Yeah, I don't, I don't talk about it, but like one of my besides music, one of the interests that I really have is aviation, and so I'm huge into. And I'm not a pilot, and I have no interest in flying, but I just the whole idea of aviation interests me, and like you say, Craig. John Denver was piloting a plane that he was unfamiliar with. I mean, that's a recipe for disaster right there. It's not like jumping into a car. You can jump into any car, or jumping into a car with maybe a manual transmission that you're not familiar with driving. That's not going to kill you. But you get into a plane you've never flown before, and you're going to try and fly it. I mean, that's suicidal as far as I'm concerned. Alan, Jeff, have you checked out any more Gary Newman since your last video on synth pop? Unfortunately, I don't think I have. There may have been one album that I checked into, but I don't remember. Like the 80s. But yeah, I can't say. He's one of those artists. And somebody did a video on YouTube. I forget who it was, but was there a band that Gary Newman was in before he became a solo artist? Because somebody was showing one of those albums and it had Gary Newman on the cover. So I don't know if you know what band that was, but Denver's wasn't even an experimental plane. Yeah, well, and not only like Thurman Munson was another one. I know he's not a musician, but he was a baseball player. But he was a pilot in the plane that he died in. Tubeway Army, yeah, Brian, that was the band, the band that Gary Newman was in. I maybe I need to check them out too. But it's interesting, like the history of. When you're going back to synth pop, everybody always points to Kraftwerk, but wasn't Tubeway Army like around the same time like Kraftwerk were doing like Trans Europe Express and some of those like late 70s albums. John Denver's crash site was Monterey Bay, which is 2 hours away from me. I've gone to Monterey Bay many times. I've thought about doing a video on like tragic artists who died very tragically. I mean, John Denver would be one. Jeff Buckley's another one who came to mind. Not in an aviation crash, but he, very recklessly went out swimming in somewhere he never should have been swimming. There were warning signs saying, "Do not swim here. It's dangerous." And he went out into that water anyway, got sucked under from the undertow from a passing ship, and he ended up dying. You got John Lennon, obviously, who was assassinated. Sonny Bono, didn't he die skiing? Didn't he like smack into a tree or something like that? But yeah, very tragic. JFK, yeah, JFK Jr., Rich, another guy. And the whole JFK Jr. thing, that was reckless from the word go. First of all, he was not an instrument-rated pilot, and I don't want to get too technical with people, but JFK Jr. was not as experienced a pilot as, number one, he thought he was, or maybe people were led to believe. But for that flight, his final flight, he left too late in the day. He was not an instrument-rated pilot, so he couldn't fly in what's called IFR conditions. He can only fly under visual flight rules. In other words, you have to be able to fly, and there have to be city lights, or it can't be cloudy. You can't be flying through the clouds under VFR conditions because you'll get what's called spatial disorientation. You don't know you're up from your down, you're left from your right. And what JFK Jr. did, because what he was doing was he didn't have there was no horizon, there were no lights, there was no Nothing to give him an idea of where he was at, because he was flying like over the ocean and it was nighttime. He left too late in his plane. He was in a hurry to get there. He was careless. And I mean, unfortunately, he died because, at least most people think, because it was dark, he didn't have any like visual references to tell him, like, are you up? Are you down? Are you upside down? Or where are you? And he just lost control of his plane. So yeah, another like really reckless kind of a thing. So Craig says, I'm also 45 minutes from the tree that James Dean hit. Wow. Ed says, Android and La La Land is a 2016 documentary film about musician Gary Newman. Oh, okay. Well, maybe I need to check that one out, because I really don't know much about Gary Newman other than the fact he's got that album I have and he had that hit song Cars. Alan, the Eurythmics' first album, In the Garden, was pretty dark. You know, I've seen that before. It's always been like $20, and I'm like, is it any good? I like the Eurythmics. I have most of the records, but to be honest, I see that one sometimes and I'm like, it's a little pricey. I don't know anything on this album, but based on your recommendation, next time I see it, I might have to pick that one up. I do like Susie and the Banshees. Yeah, as a matter of fact, what do I have by Susie and the Banshees? I've got this, which is this is like a race. Once Upon a Time, the singles. And then there's another one, the companion piece, which is called Twice Upon a Time. And this has got like their late 80s, early 90s stuff. So yeah, I do like Susie and the Banshees, actually. Yeah, Craig, I forgot you're on the West Coast, so it's probably about dinner time for you. So thanks for stopping in again. Yeah, if you can jump back in, that'd be very cool. The first Eurythmics record is really good. I'm gonna have to check that out. And I feel like bad that I passed it over, but I just, I'm like, I don't know if I want to spend $20 on Eurythmics record, but yeah, I mean, that's my bad. And then I'll have to check out that Gary Newman documentary as well. Yeah, and I think the first Eurythmics record and the last one are the two I don't have. I've got Sweet Dreams Are Made of This. I got Revenge. I've got God, I can't think of the one that's got There Must Be an Angel. Yeah, I've got like 5 or 6 Eurythmics records, but I just don't have. We Two Are One, I think, is the last Eurythmics record that I have. It doesn't sound exactly like Sweet Dreams though, but if it's darker, like I'm totally into dark. Rich Strickler, off topic. Did Lee Harvey Oswald act alone? Wow, now we're into JFK. Okay, here's the love chart guy. Like, seriously, how does this guy? I gotta hide this guy too. I thought I hit him already, but now he's back. All right, Patsy Cline. Yeah, Patsy Cline's another one who died in a plane crash. How could I forget that one? Yeah. All right, I just blocked him, Steven. So hopefully we're rid of this asshole. So yeah, Lee Harvey Oswald, did he act alone? I'm of the opinion that yes, he did. I think there was, I mean, if we're getting into JFK conspiracy theories, I think there was talk about it was a conspiracy, but personally, I think he did act alone. What's the next music movie you're going to watch? I'm going to watch Prince, Sign of the Times. When we're done here tonight, how about you? Well, you guys have talked about so many that I need to check out. I would probably say, I mean, hold on. I'm just trying to look back through all of the ones because you guys are giving me a lot to think about. Yeah, what would you guys watch next? I almost want to say I want to go check out Thank God It's Friday, just because you guys got that in my mind. I'm like, oh, I totally remember that movie. That's hilarious. Um, Hank Williams died tragically. Yeah, also Johnny Horton. What happened I'm forgetting what happened to Johnny Horton. I know Hank Williams, didn't he kind of drink himself to death? I mean, you could say the same for Robert Johnson. Didn't Robert Johnson die? Like, wasn't he killed by like a jealous husband of somebody who was having an affair with? Um, Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate that. Yeah, I've got quite a few box sets. I did a video on my box set collection maybe about a year ago, and I've gotten some more. So I think maybe I need to update that video. But yeah, thank you, Thomas. Very kind of you. I've seen Steven, I've seen A Mighty Wind. I love all those videos. I love A Mighty Wind. I love Best in Show. What's the other one? Waiting for Guffman. Yeah, those are fantastic. I love those movies. Yeah, and I love my favorite the in The Mighty Wind is when they have an album, but they have to punch their own hole, their own spindle hole, because the record got pressed, but they didn't punch out the spindle hole, so they have to. Yeah, it's almost like a Spinal Tap movie. It's like a folk 60s folk Spinal Tap kind of movie. That is such a great one. All those movies are fantastic. Yeah, Bauhaus. Yeah, because Peter Murphy was in Bauhaus, Alan. Yeah, I love. I got to get into them. And some of those like late 70s, early 80s bands like the Misfits or Black Flag, some of those bands that I totally missed the boat on back in the day, like I'm kind of rediscovering. But yeah, Bauhaus is one. Didn't they have a song? Was that Bela Lugosi's Dead? Well, that was Bauhaus, right? Yeah, the guys from Spinal Tap were in A Mighty Wind. That is a fantastic movie. Yeah, if you love Spinal Tap and you haven't checked out A Mighty Wind, yeah, it's just hilarious. That core group, those guys, I think the last movie they put out was a cheerleading movie, if I'm not mistaken. It was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. They put out another movie, but I wish they would come out with more because those were a riot. Trumpeter Lee Morgan had a tragic. See, now we got what is it with this guy? Why can't I block him? Okay, I'm hiding the user from the channel, but he still seems coming back. So, anyway, I don't know if he's coming under a different name, but anyway, he's not going to bring me down. You got a TV, DVD, and VCR in your man cave? Not in my man cave, but in my the main living room where I watch TV. I do have a VCR. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was like, I got to start playing some old VHS tapes that I have, like that movie Sympathy for the Devil. If you guys have ever checked that out, it's got some Rolling Stone footage from the Beggars Banquet days. That was one I got to pop in the VCR and watching. And Lee Morgan, yeah, what happened to Lee Morgan? Didn't his wife shoot him? I think his wife killed him, right, Brian? Spinal Tap in concert at Pine Knob, Ed, really? 80% of the crowd was not in on the joke. How could that be? That's funny. Yeah, Sam Cooke was murdered, Rich. Yeah. And he was murdered. I mean, as dignified as a performer he died like in a motel, like office, naked, just under very suspicious circumstances. I don't think that they've ever figured out what happened to Sam Cooke. But yeah, that's another great example Rich, absolutely. I'm trying to think who else. Who else died? I mean, you could talk about, I mean, the Allman brothers, Dwayne Allman dying in a motorcycle crash. And then was it Dickie Betts who died like a year later in the same intersection that Dwayne Allman had his motorcycle crash in? Is that Jeff? You ever seen the movie Crossroads with Stevie Vai and the Karate Kid? Was Crossroads? I don't think I did. A Light of Day. Light of Day. I'm confusing that for whatever reason with Light of Day, which had Joan Jett and who was the guy? I can't think of his name. He was in the guy from Back to the Future. But you know who I'm talking about. Yeah. Okay, well, who was all right? It wasn't Dickie Betts, but who was the guy? Who was the guy from Allman Brothers? You know who I'm talking about. He died in a motorcycle accident. It was like exactly a year after Dwayne Allman died, in like the same intersection, riding a motorcycle. I don't remember. Yeah, Barry Oakley. Was it Barry Oakley? It could have been. And I've got Greg Allman's autobiography, so I should know, but it's one of those things. I can't keep like that much information in my head. So Michael J. Fox. Yeah, Michael J. Fox. How can I not remember that name? I don't know. You like Sisters of Mercy and the Mission UK? You know, I haven't heard too much Sisters of Mercy or Mission UK. I mean, I'm familiar with them, but I probably need to check them out too. I know, didn't the Sisters of Mercy, like their greatest hits, have like a pentagram on the cover or something like that? I know they're another band that I need to check out. Yeah. Sorry, Dickie Betts. Didn't mean to kill you off prematurely, but yeah, he was another one. I'm trying to think. Like, yeah, I was gonna do like an entire episode on tragic artist deaths. I mean, you could even talk like if we're going to talk about jazz. I mean, how about Chet Baker? He either fell out a window or he got pushed out a window and fell to his death. And you know, Chet Baker, just to get into a little bit of jazz, there were many countries he could not enter because he had so many drug charges against him. That guy, his life was an entire dumpster fire. And he was such a gifted jazz musician. He was one of the few jazz musicians who actually sang on his records. But his life was just a train wreck. He could not get off the heroin. He was trying to smuggle heroin into Europe. He was bouncing around from country to country. And he was such, back in his day, like in the 50s and 60s, he was a model. He looked gorgeous. He was a specimen of a human being. And then in like the 70s and 80s, he looked like a monster. I mean, he looked like a zombie. It's startling. If you look at Chet Baker in the 50s and look at Chet Baker in the 80s, like, holy shit. It's another really tragic case. Dennis Wilson, yeah, Rich, Dennis Wilson drowning. That was another one. And Dennis Wilson, people don't know, like, how did Dennis Wilson drown? Dennis Wilson was another, his life was a dumpster fire. He was a serious alcoholic and a drug addict. He was like, I think he weighed like 100 pounds when he died. And he owned a boat. And I forget what happened. Something about he had dumped overboard a bunch of his belongings. And he went down diving, trying to find like these belongings that he had dumped over. And I don't remember why he dumped these belongings that he had overboard. And he went down and he kept diving under the water, and he was intoxicated. He kept going underwater trying to search for jewelry or something that he had thrown overboard. And because he was drunk, because he was diving deeper than he could have, and he was a great swimmer, but he drowned. How about Brian Jones? Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones. people thought for the longest time that his death was accidental. However, come to find out, he might have been murdered. There were people who were doing work on his house. He bought the house that A.J. Milne, who wrote the Winnie the Pooh books, he bought his estate. He bought the house, and he was doing he was hiring people to do renovations on his mansion. And these people were crooked. They were taking his money. They were ripping him off. And he confronted these people, and he was ready to fire them. Well, they were all over to the house, and he was swimming. And the story goes that these people were like taunting him, and they were like being aggressive with him, and they were like dunking him under the water and holding him under. And allegedly, if you've read the books, apparently it looks like Brian Jones may have been murdered, because Brian Jones was a great swimmer. I don't believe he was on drugs at the time. He had been on drugs. He was definitely fucked up in 68 and 69. It's one of the reasons why the Rolling Stones fired him. He'd had a number of drug busts, but it seems like the story now is that he may have been murdered because he was a great swimmer, and he was not on drugs. I think toxicology reports showed that he, did not have drugs or alcohol in his system. So people say that he was murdered. So that's another tragic death. Chronic Town was just re-released. You know, that's funny, One Track Mind, because I actually just bought the CD. I just ordered the CD about 2 hours ago. I just saw, like, holy crap, I just saw they did a re-release. Chris Prophy showed the cassette that he just got the cassette, Chronic Town, the re-release. But yeah, I got the CD. I'm supposed to get it tomorrow. I'm real excited about that. Steve Marriott. Yeah, Steve Marriott's death, Rich. That was another one. Yeah, died of smoke inhalation. Wasn't he smoking in bed? And didn't his bed catch fire or something like that? Yeah, Bird with Forrest Whitaker about Charlie Parker. That was a great movie. Uriah Heep, Gary Thane from heroin. David Byron, alcohol. Yeah. Group of people abducting Peter Green from Fleetwood Mac, giving him a mega dose of acid and changing Fleetwood Mac forever. Yeah, Peter Green, that was one of Peter Green was Fleetwood Mac was Peter Green's band. And yeah, that's another one. Roy Orbison had several tragedies in his life, and his career bombed in the late 80s, but he died of a heart attack, or his career boomed in the late 80s. Yeah, because he had Jeff Lynne produced, didn't he? Jeff Lynne produced Mystery Girl, his final album. And he was in the Traveling Wilburys. What do I think about Black Audio? I don't know what that is, One Track Mind. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, these are all things I guess Terry Kath died. Yeah. I know we talked about Terry Kath before when we were talking about documentaries, but yeah, Terry Kath, he was playing Russian roulette. Terry Kath was a big gun owner, and he was cleaning his guns, or he was messing around with his guns, and I think he'd been drinking, and he was with like their roadie or somebody, and put a gun to his head, didn't think it was loaded, pulled the trigger, or no, I know what it was. His friend was like, Terry, be careful with those guns. Don't be messing with those guns. You've been drinking, not a good idea. And Terry's like, they're not even loaded. Blew his brains out. One of the most brilliant guitarists of the 60s and 70s. Yeah, that one of the biggest tragedies too. If you watch that Chicago documentary, those guys still never got over that death. So yeah, just really sad. Brian Jones was fired because he was on drugs. Well, that's one reason. The other reason was he could not tour. He couldn't because of all of his drug convictions. He was limited. I believe that like his visa or something had been revoked. So yeah, it largely had to do with drugs. He was He was stoned out of his mind. He barely contributed to the Beggars Banquet sessions. And he had been in a lot of trouble because of his drug bust. And, Mick and Keith were like, yeah, we're planning on doing a major tour and you're an impediment to that. So, yeah, Brian Jones got kicked out because of drugs. And people may think he died when he was in the Rolling Stones, but no, he was not. He played a little bit on Let It Bleed. I think he's credited on maybe 2 songs, but remember when Grace Slick tried to slip some acid to Nixon? She got some real stories in her book. Yeah, I'm sure she does. Holy cow. And the Chicago documentary is cool. At the end, when the daughter found the missing guitar. Yeah, Terry Kath was one of those guitarists who, because he died so young, because he was in a band like Chicago, which a lot of people think, oh, they were that, soft rock band. I think he's really been overlooked a lot of the time, but yeah. Black Audio is a side project of AFI, very influenced by OMD and Depeche Mode. No kidding. I had no idea. I'll have to check them out. Because I'm a big Depeche Mode OMD guy, so that sounds like right up my alley. Porcupine Tree. Don't hate me, but I don't think I've ever heard of them before. So yeah, well, all right. Yeah, well, there's so many tragic rock and roll deaths. And yeah, absolutely. Yeah, early Chicago was great. I think up until yeah, I mean, their first 3 albums are great. Chicago 5 is okay. Chicago 6. But like once Peter Cetera started putting out all those kind of cheesy ballads, that's when they lost me, and I think they lost a lot of people. Yeah, Rich Karen Carpenter, Anorexia. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any others that just kind of stand out, but yeah, those are like the big ones. Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, all drug overdoses, very tragically. Alan, Jeff, have you heard OMD's Dazzle Ships? Yeah, I love the Dazzle Ships album, and it's really unlike anything else that they've done. And it's almost like, the way they try to replicate kind of like a radio program reminds me a little bit of the Who Sell Out. But yeah, I love Dazzle Ships. Dazzle Ships, I know it's a lot of people's favorite OMD album. This is, I'm sorry for the glare, but yeah, I've got it on vinyl and I have it on CD and I've got it on cassette also somewhere. Got it on cassette. So yeah, love that record. Love OMD, as you know. I'm a big OMD. I'm always talking up OMD. So yeah, Jimi Hendrix, like we said before, Cass Elliot. Well, everybody says, oh yeah, Cass Elliot, the big joke was Cass Elliot choked on a ham sandwich. I don't think she really did. I think I don't know what happened with her, but I think it was more than that. I don't know if it's drug related. I'm not sure exactly what. One Track Mind, maybe we sent you some records. I don't know. I'm not sure what that means. Dimebag Darrell. Yeah. Oh my God. The Dimebag Darrell. That was a horrific story where that guy went into the club and shot him up. Holy shit. Yeah. That's one of the worst. I mean, talking about artists who were murdered, Dimebag Darrell is right up there with John Lennon. Holy crap. And I think they've even got like video footage of when that happened or the aftermath of that. But that's terrible. Do you have any Midnight Special DVD compilations? No, I don't. But do they exist? Because those are some great concerts like in the late 70s. Yeah, or Fridays. Remember that show, Fridays? Mike saw Scott Weiland at a little club here in Eau Claire about a month before he died. Scott, we love you, is leaving the stage. Wow, that's amazing. And that kind of reminds me of that story I always tell about Soundgarden. I wasn't at that concert, the last concert that he did, but at the Fox Theater, that I wish I'd been at that concert. The last concert that Chris Cornell, when he committed suicide in Detroit. That's another really tragic one. John Bonham and Keith Moon. John Bonham, just went on a bender and choked on his own vomit. Keith Moon, he had been weaning himself off alcohol, and he OD'd on the pills that were supposed to help him with that. What's my favorite album? God, I would have to say probably I'm going to go with Spirit of Eden. Spirit of Eden. Just because I love, I love The Color of Spring, but for me, I think their peak was Spirit of Eden. That's like their Dark Side of the Moon for me. Michael Hutchence, NXS, yeah. I know we could do an entire episode just devoted. Hey, Basil, how's it going? What are you doing? Isn't it past your bedtime, Basil? Just kidding. Bon Scott, yeah. Bon Scott died the same way John Bonham did, choked on his own vomit. Yeah. So Craig says Mama Cass died in bed of a heart attack. She had a sandwich on the nightstand with a bite out of it. So it was going around. Yeah, that was the whole thing. And I feel bad because Mama Cass got such a, people for years were making fun of the fact, oh, Mama Cass, she's overweight. She choked on ham sandwich. No, she didn't. She had a heart attack. Michael Hutchence, really sad. One of the drummers of Spinal Tap choked. Well, didn't one of the drummers for Spinal Tap spontaneously combust also? Phil Lynott of Thin Lizzy. Yeah, Rich, you've had some great ones. The documentary Mike saw on Mama Cass, so the sandwich had not been bitten. Yeah, well, I don't know anything about all that, but I think the whole ham sandwich thing has been discredited a while ago. Well, and Michael Hutchence was such a tragedy because, he was involved with Paula, somebody, I don't remember who it was, who had formerly been the girlfriend of the Live Aid guy, the guy who was in, and it's getting late. I'm getting a little tired, so I can't remember the guy who was in The Wall, the guy who was in, I can't think of his name, but anyway, he was, his girlfriend was in a custody dispute with the guy from Boomtown Rats. I can't think of his name right now because I'm getting a little sleepy, but and he, I don't think it had to end that way. Like, it was a suicide, but he was very distraught. And it was one of those things if he had been in a better state of mind, things could have ended differently, but very tragic. Bob Geldof, thank you. Yeah, I know I mentioned Bob Geldof because he was on The Wall earlier, but the later it gets, the more my memory starts to deteriorate. Thank you, Brian and Steven. Okay, Alan, what turns you on more, lyrics, melodies, or song structures and progressions? For me, I'm a melody guy. I pay attention to melodies more way before I do lyrics, and not that lyrics aren't important, but I've always just been kind of a melody guy, and that's always been my favorite thing. Kurt Cobain. Yeah, Kurt Cobain. Marvin Gaye killed by his father. Yeah, well, that was a death by a cop. People say that Marvin Gaye provoked his father, knew his father had a gun, provoked him. And Marvin Gaye is another person whose life was a complete train wreck. Everybody knows him as a socially conscious artist who put out What's Going On. And to be sure, he was one of the great Motown artists. but his life just unraveled because of drugs. And he was heavily into cocaine. He might have been into heroin, but he was into drugs big time. And his father was a cross-dresser. His father was very abusive. I think his father made Joe Jackson look like Mr. Rogers, and he knew his father had a gun. I think he actually bought the gun that he was killed with. I think he actually bought for his father. And he got into an argument with his father, knew his father had a gun. People say he deliberately provoked his father. His father shot him. But yeah, another huge tragedy. Basil, yes, I'm a big Doors fan. Big Doors fan. Yeah, Rich Dolores O'Riordan of the Cranberries. Absolutely. Kurt Cobain was another one where the warning signs were all there and tried to get help. He left rehab right before he killed himself. The guitarist from Def Leppard, Steve, I can't think of Steve's, I can't think of the guy from Def Leppard, the guitarist who also died very tragically. Yeah, Alan, you and I are both Melody guys. Yeah, totally. How did Rick James die? Is Rick James dead? Yeah, see, I don't know. Well, guys, this has been a fun live stream. I appreciate you guys are so awesome, and I really do. I love that you guys keep me company. I'm flying solo today, but you guys made it so fun. You made the hours pass very quickly. I do appreciate it. Next week, I promise we'll have more guys. You won't have to just put up with me, but thank you guys so much. I honestly, the fact that you guys want to sit here and listen to me ramble on just really touches me. It honestly does. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you, everybody who has tuned in. We're going to catch up with you next week. Hopefully, I'll have Chris and Josh and Aaron and Gary and Brandon. We'll have the whole crew back. This was just one of those weeks where I had to go it alone, but I'm totally fine because you guys are so cool and you guys are very kind. Stay tuned for more of my favorite 100 albums. Again, you guys totally rock. And yeah, maybe this is more fun because you get me all to yourselves maybe, but thank you guys so much. And you guys have a great night, have a great weekend, and I look forward to catching up with you guys next week. So everybody have a great week. You guys are the best. And yeah, take care.